Hello everyone, this is Player 1 with Basement Hero, bringing you more news from BlizzCon 2014. This time I'm bringing you a summary of the Diablo 3 What's Next panel. They wanted to talk to us about patch 2.1.2, which is in view, as they say. The public test realm is soon, and soon after that it'll be hitting live. In this patch there's quite a bit of good changes, a lot of neat stuff. The first thing they talked about was treasure goblins. Instead of just having four goblins that do all the same stuff, they will have the gold goblin and then three new goblins. One of them is a gem hoarder, where when you attack him, he drops gems, and when he dies, there's a big gem explosion, and that's all that is. The next treasure goblin is an odious collector. When you're attacking him, he can drop crafting materials, and when he dies, has a chance to drop a lot of really good plans. The next treasure goblin, the third of the three new ones, is a blood thief. He drops blood shards, and when he dies, he drops a whole lot of blood shards. The last thing they wanted to say about treasure goblins really was that there is a new minimap icon, so it's easier to find and see on the minimap if you need to look there. Next thing they talked about was adventure mode. First thing they were talking about there is how there's going to be new hub layouts. So in Act 1, instead of running halfway across the map to get to the jewel crafter and then all the way back to get to the blacksmith, they're going to be making that much more compact, and it's going to be a new little compact area just like Act 3, so you don't have to just run and run and run and run. It's much faster, easier. Next thing they talked about were bounties and new tile layouts and zones. Some of the zones they weren't happy with how they looked because they weren't originally geared for bounties when they were made. So now, instead of having to go in and look for the Den of the Fallen with always having the river on the right and the road right there and a big old field to the left, they're going to make it much more fun to look around in. Next thing they talked about were legendary gems. They have noticed patterns that some gems aren't getting much use and some gems are being used by most people. Instead of taking a nerf bat to some of these gems and trying to even them all out, instead, they're going to be releasing new gear and new plans that might make some of the older gems better. So you might have something that'll use Wreath of Lightning a lot more. You never know. I don't know how the new gear is going to be, but that's their plan. They are going to be bringing in two new legendary gems. One of them is healing and one of them is defensive. So that's something to look forward to as well. Next thing they talked about were greater rifts and the changes involved there. One of the first things they talked about were pylons. How conduit pylons were the best pylon. That's the one everyone wants, right? And it's true. Well, instead of nerfing the conduit pylon, they're going to instead try to buff the speed pylon and the shield pylon. So for the 2 to 4 pylons they're aiming for people to get each run, the speed pylon will now have something like a minute-long duration, and you'll be able to run through enemies and knock them into the air. And the shield pylon might reflect a lot of damage and explode on completion of the duration. Next thing they talked about was improving monster density in the empty maps. So instead of running around and around and around trying to find monsters to kill, the monster density will get better. The other thing they talked about was the level distribution. How sometimes the random map generator would give you just really, really long hallways, or they would give you the underground caves that would have those giant loops that were almost as bad as a dead end. Well, now they're going to try to get rid of that and make that better, so that there won't be really long hallways you have to run down and then find a dead end and run back, and it's wasting a lot of time in these timed rifts. Which, that's good. Next thing they talked about was softcore death. So, of course, when you die in hardcore, you're dead, but in softcore, when you die, they're bringing back the Reset Corpse button. So instead of having to run all the way back to where you died, you'll have that option. But at the same time, when you die, that timer will increase. So the first time you die, it might not have a long timer, but the more you die, the timer will go up in time and make it much more of a penalty to die. Then after that, they talked about Season 2. So Season 1 will be ending, and Season 2 will be beginning. It's going to be on the public test realm soon as well. They're going to be changing, removing, and adding some of the conquests for the leaderboards. Most specifically, they were talking about how one of the current conquests was Speed Racer, how you had to complete the whole game in under an hour, and how that would really change gameplay, and you had to have specific group makeups if you wanted to work things out and change your gear and your talents and all kinds of stuff like that. Well, they want to add in some new conquests that are like that bring a different element of gameplay to the game. Next, they told us that there will be new transmog pieces. There are going to be legs and boots this time, and then Season 3 will complete the set, so that if you leveled up characters in all 3 seasons, you will have a full set of transmog armor. Should be cool. And then the last thing they talked about for that part was that there will of course be new legendary only, seasonal legendary onlys, one of which is a Witch Doctor staff and the other are Wizard Bracers. I don't know what to expect there. I mean, they showed a little bit, like the Witch Doctor staff was talking about, I believe it was Locust Swarm, how you didn't actually have to cast it. It would just automatically be applied to enemies. And the Wizard Bracer had to do with Twisters and maybe bringing Twisters back. We'll see. Anyway, next thing they talked about were ancient items. So once you get towards the end game and you might have collected some of the best gear, there's going to be chances for a new tier higher of that same stuff that should be about 30% better, and that will be available in Torment and higher. So if you already have this certain staff that you really like, there's a chance that you'll get that same staff only 30% better, which will be a huge increase. After that, they talked about some new zones. First one they talked about was the Ruins of Secheron, which it will be in adventure mode. It's going to be near the Ariat crater in Act 3. It's going to have like a barbarian theme to it, a lot of traps, new monsters. That was the next thing they talked about, and actually one of the last things they talked about were new monsters. There's going to be some Swarmer monsters, some Naja beetles, some Frost maggots, which were pretty interesting because when they get close and die, they freeze you. So that can be real bad if you get swarmed by them and they just keep freezing you and there are other monsters sitting there ready to kill you. There will be these glowing death monsters, which are basically the wasps, like in Act 2, but instead of just flying around and shooting bees at you, these will be melee-type wasps. They do have a ranged attack, but they won't use it very much. There's a chance in the future they'll bring out a Yeti family, and then the last one they really showed was a Rat King, which looked pretty nasty. It's got a really big rat with a hive on its back. It would have stuff that lives inside it and crawls out, a whole bunch of rats, basically. And when it dies, it explodes, or if you die, it eats you, and some nasty stuff like that. But anyway, that is a basic summary of the Diablo 3 panel. Hopefully it is helpful, and I will bring you more news of other stuff soon. Thanks. This is Player One Basement Hero. Talk to you next time.